I didn't lose my family slowly, I lost them over dinner. My parents waited until the plates were empty before telling me. I had two choices: pay for my sister's wedding or lose them forever. The worst part? They were sitting in my house when they said it, the house I paid for, the house they'd taken over. And when I finally said no, everything they'd been hiding came out. My name is Natalie Brooks. I'm 33 years old, and the moment my parents gave me their ultimatum, I knew something inside our family was finally going to break. They waited until dinner was almost finished. The plates were scraped clean, the wine glasses half empty. The soft hum of the dishwasher filled the silence in my house, the one I owned, paid for, and had slowly watched stop feeling like mine. My mother folded her napkin carefully and placed it on the table. "Natalie," she said, smiling in that calm, reasonable way she used when she was about to say something unreasonable. "Your father and I have talked." That sentence always meant trouble. My younger sister Claire, sitting across from me, didn't look up from her phone. She already knew what was coming. I could tell by the slight curl of her mouth, satisfaction disguised as indifference. "We've decided," my father added, clearing his throat, "that since you're in the best financial position, you'll be paying for Claire's wedding." I waited. There was always a second part. "And if you can't," my mother continued smoothly, "then we'll need to rethink what kind of relationship we have going forward." The words landed softly, but the message was sharp. Pay for your sister's wedding or lose your family. The ultimatum was delivered at my dining table, inside my own home, the same house my parents had been living in rent-free for nearly 3 years. Claire finally looked up. She smiled. 3 years earlier, my parents had arrived with 2 suitcases and a promise. "Just for a little while," my mother said. "Until your dad finds something." My father had lost his job at a mid-sized accounting firm in Columbus, Ohio. Downsizing, restructuring, corporate language for "you're no longer useful." They stayed in my guest room at first. That lasted exactly 1 week. By the end of month 1, the living room was filled with their old furniture. The kitchen cabinets had been reorganized because you don't store spices correctly. The thermostat was permanently set to a temperature that made me sweat in winter. Then came the day I lost my bedroom. "Claire needs the master," my mother said, already pulling my clothes from the closet. "She has more things." I laughed at first. I thought she was joking. She wasn't. I moved into the guest room, the same twin bed I'd bought for visiting friends, while my sister spread out in the room I'd saved for years to earn. I told myself it was temporary. I was wrong. I'd been working since I was 15. Scholarships paid for part of college. 2 jobs paid for the rest. Law school came with loans so large they felt fictional. While Claire changed majors twice and took a gap year in Italy paid for by our parents, I worked nights and weekends. By 30, I was an associate at a regional firm. By 31, senior associate. By 32, financially stable enough to buy my own home. And that stability became my family's safety net. The electric bill doubled. The grocery bill tripled. Gas mysteriously vanished from my car. When I mentioned expenses, my mother squeezed my hand. Family helps family, it sounded loving. If WS and single quotes T. Claire never cleaned. She left dishes in the sink until they smelled. Laundry in the washer until it molded. When I moved it, she accused me of touching her things. My father used my car without asking, returned it empty. Once with a cracked tail light he claimed must have already been there. They referred to the house as ours. They invited guests without asking. They made decisions without consulting me. When I tried to set rules, they exchanged looks, the ones that said she's being dramatic again. I started working longer hours just to avoid coming home. The breaking point came on a Tuesday morning. My neighbor, Mrs. Feldman, stopped me while I was checking the mail. "It's so nice of your parents to help you," she said warmly. I blinked. "Help me?" "Yes," she smiled. "Moving in during your financial struggles." Such support. My stomach dropped. They had been telling people they were supporting me. that I couldn't manage alone, that I needed them. I went inside shaking. That night, I started therapy. Back at the dinner table, my mother reached for dessert. "We've budgeted carefully," she said. "About $31,000 should cover everything." The venue was in Sedona, Arizona. The dress was custom. The photographer was non-negotiable. "That's my emergency fund," I said. My father shrugged. "You'll rebuild it." Claire didn't even pretend to care. "You don't have kids. You don't travel. What else would you use it for?" Something inside me went cold. Dr. Elaine Porter didn't rush to comfort me. That was the first thing that made her different. When I told her about the wedding demand, the house, the years of financial bleed, she didn't soften her voice or search for silver linings. She listened, took notes, let the silence stretch. Then she said, "Natalie, your family isn't asking for help." I waited. "They're exercising entitlement." The word landed cleanly. I felt something loosen in my chest. "You've been trained," she continued, "to confuse love with usefulness. That's not your fault. But it is your responsibility to unlearn it." I laughed weakly. "If I say no, they'll cut me off." She tilted her head. "From what?" That question stayed with me all week. That Friday night, I sat alone at the kitchen table with my laptop open. I pulled bank statements from the last 3 years. Mortgage, utilities, groceries, gas, insurance increases, credit card charges I didn't recognize but remembered arguing about. I built a spreadsheet. When I finished, the total stared back at me. $118,420. That was what my family had cost me. Not counting emotional labor. Not counting lost promotions from exhaustion. Not counting the therapy bills. Just cash. I closed the laptop and cried harder than I had in years. Sunday dinner was tense. My parents sat together, shoulders squared. Claire wore a new dress and an engagement ring I knew I'd be expected to admire. So my father said, "Have you thought about it?" "Yes," I replied. They leaned forward. "I'm not paying for the wedding." Silence. My mother's smile froze. "Natalie, no," I said. My voice surprised me. "Steady, and you'll need to move out within 60 days. Claire laughed. "You're joking." "I'm not." My mother's face flushed. "After everything we've done for you?" I met her eyes. "You mean after everything I've done for you?" The room exploded. "You're selfish. You're ungrateful. You've changed. This isn't how family treats each other." The words came rapid fire, like they'd rehearsed. Claire stood, tears already forming. "You're ruining my wedding." My father slammed his hand on the table. "We raised you better than this." I felt the familiar pull, the urge to fix, to apologize, to retreat. But Dr. Porter's voice echoed in my head. "Who benefits when you have no boundaries?" I stood. "This conversation is over." They followed me down the hallway, shouting. My mother cried loudly enough to make sure the neighbors could hear. I locked my bedroom door. For the first time in years, I slept. The next morning, my car wouldn't start. Later that day, my credit card was declined for a charge I hadn't made. By evening, Claire had posted a vague Facebook status about toxic people who abandon family when things get hard. Relatives began calling, and Susan told me I was heartless. Cousin Mark said I should just pay and move on. My grandmother cried quietly and said nothing. They were trying to punish me back into obedience. It didn't work. I consulted a lawyer on Monday. By Wednesday, the notice was drafted. I taped it to the refrigerator. My parents stared at it like it was written in another language. "You can't do this," my mother whispered. "I already did." Claire packed dramatically, slamming drawers, making sure I heard every sob. My father didn't speak to me again. 60 days later, they were gone. The house felt enormous and silent. And mine, the first week alone felt unreal. No door slamming, no television blaring at full volume. No commentary on what I ate, wore, or spent. The quiet wasn't peaceful yet. It was suspicious. I kept waiting for something to go wrong, as if peace were a trick that would be taken back once I relaxed into it. At night, I walked through the house touching walls, light switches, door frames, reclaiming them, teaching my body that I was safe. Dr. Porter warned me about this part. When you stop being the provider, she said, your nervous system panics. You've been trained to anticipate crisis. She was right. I felt restless, guilty, unproductive. I opened my banking app just to stare at the balance money that wasn't already promised to someone else. I didn't know how to feel about it yet. I bought groceries without calculating who would eat what. I set the thermostat where I liked it. I slept diagonally across my bed. Each choice felt rebellious. 2 weeks after they moved out, my aunt called again. Her tone had changed. Your mother says you're struggling financially, she said carefully. That she's worried. I laughed. A real laugh this time. I'm doing better than I have in years. There was a pause. That's not what we were told. The lie was unraveling, slowly. I didn't hear about Claire directly at first. Information came sideways through relatives, neighbors, fragments of conversations that weren't meant to reach me. She and her fiancé argued constantly. The wedding date was postponed. Then the venue canceled. When my parents moved in with her temporarily, the strain cracked their fantasy. Rent was real. Utilities were real. Boundaries were suddenly necessary. For the first time in her life, Claire couldn't outsource responsibility. My mother showed up unannounced one afternoon. I didn't invite her in. She looked smaller, tired. Her voice trembled as she spoke. We didn't mean for things to go this far, she said. We just thought you could handle it. I nodded. I did handle it, I replied. Until it started costing me myself. She reached for my hand. I stepped back. You hurt us, she said. No, I corrected gently. I stopped letting you hurt me. She left without another word. Freedom changed me in ways I didn't expect. At work, I stopped volunteering for everything. I said no without explaining. I delegated. And instead of punishing me, people respected me. My boss noticed. Promotions followed. I started traveling small trips at first, then bigger ones. I filled my life with things I'd postponed for later. Later had arrived. Claire called me at 2:14 a.m. I stared at the phone until it stopped vibrating. Then it rang again, and again. On the fourth call, I answered not because I felt obligated, but because I was curious. What? I said. She was crying so hard she could barely breathe. He left, she gasped. He said I was irresponsible. That I expected him to fix everything. He said he couldn't marry someone who didn't know how to stand on her own. I waited. She sniffed. Mom says you turned him against me. There it was. I closed my eyes. Claire, what do you want from me? Silence. I don't know, she whispered. I thought you'd help. I spoke carefully. I love you. But I'm not your solution. She hung up without saying goodbye. The wedding was officially canceled 3 weeks later. Deposits were lost. Dresses returned. Invitations recycled. My parents scrambled to soften the narrative. They told people Claire was re-evaluating her priorities, that the stress had been too much, that I had changed. But cracks widened, because this time there was no emergency fund to raid. No older sister to lean on. No quiet bailout that made the mess disappear. Claire moved into a small apartment across town. For the first time in her life, she worked full-time. And she hated it. I ran into my grandmother at the grocery store. She looked at me for a long moment before speaking. I didn't say anything before, she said softly. Because I thought keeping the peace mattered more, I nodded. But I see it now, she continued. You were carrying too much. And they let you. Her words settled deep in my chest. I'm proud of you, she said. It felt like oxygen. Forgiveness didn't arrive as a single moment. It came in pieces. The day I stopped rehearsing arguments in the shower. The day I stopped checking my phone after family gatherings I didn't attend. The day I realized my life felt full without their approval. Forgiveness, I learned, is not reconciliation. It's release. 6 months after the eviction, my father called. His voice was flat, controlled. Your mother's health isn't great, he said. We could use some help. I felt the old reflex spark, then fade. I hope she feels better, I said. But I can't be your safety net anymore. He exhaled sharply. So that's it. Yes, I said. That's it. When I hung up, my hands didn't shake. On my 34th birthday, I hosted a small dinner. Friends, laughter, food I loved. No tension, no obligation. I stood in the kitchen afterward, watching the city lights through my window. My house felt warm, not because it was full, but because it was honest. I had learned the hardest truth of all. Love that costs you your identity isn't love, it's control. And I was finally free.